On this episode, we're going to get this screen talking to the Arduino. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of DailyIoT. I have been spending the last 2 hours trying to get this Nextion display up and running, figuring out some of the nuances of it, and that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode. Now, I've gotten to a point on this where I've got my Washington Capitals screen showing there. And so far, the screen, first of all, is beautiful. The touch, out of the box, it comes with sort of like an iPad, iPhone type screen that has the numbers, like the lock screen where you slide to unlock and then you enter your passcode. So that's what it ships with out of the box. It looks very nice. The colors are very bright. The screen looks really good. The touch is pretty responsive. All good there. The documentation on this, however, is not good. It has taken me, like I said, about 2 hours to get to this point, where I've got the image on the screen. And so documentation is kind of hard to get through there. A couple of points I wanted to include on this. I found 2 libraries for this on the Arduino. There's a Nextion, which is a third-party library that a member of the community built that you can download directly from within the Arduino IDE, which is super nice. And then there's the official library from iTeed Studios. They cannot, however, be installed side by side because they will clash. So that's kind of a poor choice, I think, on the third-party library to clash with the official library. Although the official library is not available for download in the Arduino IDE, which is a fail on their part. So both of them doing good things, but both of them failing a little bit. So I went with, ultimately, the iTeed Studios original library just because I figured just getting started I should use the official one. And so a couple things with that. The config, like for example, the default configuration is for an Arduino Mega, which has 2 serial ports on it. The Arduino Uno that I'm using only has 1 hardware serial port, and so you actually have to dig down into the files of the library, change a header file for any of the samples to work on an Arduino Uno. So that was a problem. I feel like that stuff you should be able to change that stuff in the sketch instead of having to dig down into the library files. The other part of this is that the samples can't just run right out of the box. The thing with this display is that there is a GUI editor that they provide. It's a .NET program, and so if you have a Mac like I do, you're going to need something like Parallels, or I can't remember what the other way is to run Windows natively on your Mac, but this will only run like I said, .NET framework in a Windows environment. I haven't tried it in something like Wine on Linux, but it works okay in Parallels on my Mac. And then, so like I said, there's 2 parts to this. There is the GUI piece that you have to compile and then load onto the screen, and then there's the Arduino sketch or the code that's going to run that interacts with that GUI that you created in their editor. So there's 2 pieces to understand. The documentation on this stuff is very, very hard to come by. There's not a lot. Even examples that people have put up on Hackster are kind of hard to follow. So that's sort of the status. I can talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to keep working on this, probably a little more tomorrow, to try and get some better examples and see what I can do as far as like button interaction and things. Again, it took me a while just to get a picture to show up. So that segues us into today's word of the day. Yesterday we did GPIO. Today we're going to piggyback on that, and we're going to talk about serial transmission protocol. And so we talked about general purpose input-output and how pins can serve a variety of purposes. One of those purposes can be serial communication. Now, if you're a little bit old school like I am, you might remember serial ports on computers back in the day. They don't really come on computers nowadays, but there was this little, it's like a DB9 connector serial port on the back of your computer that you could connect various peripherals, such as mice back in the day. You can find serial mice. But again, they don't put those on computers anymore, but they're very common in embedded devices and in the world of IoT. Lots of devices will use the serial communication protocol. And unlike that serial port on your computer that had a whole bunch of pins, the serial protocol on these devices is almost always going to have just two pins, a transmit pin and a receive pin. Now, both of those pins are going to be GPIO pins. One will act as an output, the transmit, and one will act as an input, the receive pin. And so on a lot of these modules, whether it's a breakout board or a screen or a sensor, you can pick up what protocol that these use just by looking at them. In the case of this screen, if you just look right on the back, you'll see that there's a ground and a power, and then there's a TX and an RX silk screened onto the PCB. That's the board. On the back of this, there is a TX and an RX that shows you on the connector. And so right away you can say, oh, TX-RX, this is a serial communication protocol device. And so that's our word of the day, the serial protocol. You don't have to understand all the nuances of it. Just understand when we say serial communication, we're talking about, like I said, in most cases, two pins, a TX and an RX that stands for transmit and receive, and that's how two devices can talk to each other. Just as another note on top of that, normally what you'll do is you'll hook up the transmit pin on one side to the receive pin on the other, and then vice versa. You'll hook the receive pin on this side to the transmit pin on this side. So that's confusing sometimes for beginners. They might think, oh, the two TX pins go together and the RX pins goes together. But you do need to swap those. And so that's serial communication, just a quick overview. I appreciate everybody watching. That'll do it for today's episode of Daily IoT, the show where together we're learning all about the Internet of Things, one day at a time.